Sure.
So, welcome, Sireesh, to this debriefing session. And I'd say welcome back in some ways because you've been an old student. You're from 2012, from the very early days of e-GMAT. You scored 720 then off, off late, you started preparing again, and now you have a 750. Good score to an amazing score right now. How does it feel?
Oh, it feels great because so when I decided to take GMAT again, reappear for GMAT, the first thing that came to mind is obviously e-GMAT, being an old student. And if you look back the email which I wrote to you and File and e-GMAT team, um, I wrote it on the back of an email which says that one of the previous e-GMAT student who had a similar history like me scored 760. That resonated with me, and then I replied. And in that initial email itself, I said that I am aiming 750.
Yep.
So I can get greedy when I'm actually preparing and I wanted to score 770, but I think I have met my goal of scoring 750.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think it's just Q50 V42. I think you're a bit unlucky not to get 760. You should have. That's kind of the most common. Q50 V42 does lead to that. But so you prepared for the GMAT 7 years back, or 6 years back, depending
yeah,
on when you started preparing.
correct. 5.5 years. Yeah, 6 years back.
Yes.
So,
And yeah, so how did you go about preparing for it again? Because I'm sure some of that you would have forgotten.
so yeah, I mean, like I said, I like to read a lot of different content when it comes to verbal. So
Mhm.
and I have this habit of whatever sentence correction that I remember. Every time I see a sentence, I just try to. Every time I see some kind of a long sentence, I try to spot some errors or something of that sort. So
Mhm.
I I definitely have lost touch with the GMAT methodology and all that stuff. So which is the reason I thought I will subscribe to the most comprehensive course so that when I'm doing it after so much of gap and at this stage of the career, I
Mhm.
better do it correctly and I do it only once. So that is why I went for the verbal live prep. So I
GMAT
know
like
that
that.
GMAT, yeah, GMAT live prep.
Mhm.
I mean, there is another version where you only have the online videos and Scholarium and other stuff. But I thought I'll go for live prep because in case if I have any questions at least, probably I'll have more support. And I just want to make sure that I leave no stone unturned. And I just wanted to do only once because I'm in the middle of a very, very busy schedule. So I thought I'll only do it once. So yeah, I started off somewhere in October, but again, I have a lot of commitments on the professional side and
Mhm.
a lot of busy work. So I couldn't completely keep up with the pace.
Mhm.
I kind of studied it continuously for one month in the beginning,
Mhm.
1.5 month, and then I had to take a break. Almost 1.5 month, I took a break. Again, I continued, and the last before giving the exam for the last 2 months, I have been studying regularly. Um, uh, but one of the things I, I I personally feel that probably if one could complete the entire course, e-GMAT or any other course in the prescribed format in which they are suggesting, probably they could go for their test depending on their confidence levels. But my confidence level was not up to that mark because purely because I wanted to score 750, I don't want to give it again. So
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that I'm consistently scoring that score in the mock before I go.
Mhm.
And the preparation was different from the beginning, like the first time that I gave 5 years ago to now. One of the earliest things that I noticed in e-GMAT course is that you guys have somewhere mentioned that don't give mocks. Mocks are really not needed. Like when you are learning, you don't need to assess yourself, just
Mhm.
learn on a particular topic. So that was completely different than what I started off with previously. So
Mhm.
the first thing was I subscribed to 800 score long back because that was not part of e-GMAT, if you remember.
Mhm.
800 score test was not part of GMAT package then 2012, I guess. So the first thing is you go and you give a mock first, and then you look at the score, and again um, look at
That's what
the
you did then, you mean to say?
that's what I did 5 years ago. But right now, I think more or less the course is structured enough. I mean, I haven't seen many other courses, but e-GMAT for me, I think it is structured enough so that you just follow whatever is there and then follow in the way in which it was clearly given in the instructions, and then the skill you will see that the skill set is slowly improving. That is what I have noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I started off with quant because again the instruction says that go with your strength
Strength.
area.
Yes.
Then, but then like you asked me why, how do you think your quant score improved from 49 to 50 or
Mm-hmm.
48 to 50, right? I started off with quant. That was my strength area. But when I started off with the scholaranium and then I started off with number properties, and number properties is a weaker area for me out of all the others like geometry.
Mm-hmm.
Geometry was my strength. Algebra is to some extent, and number properties is a little weak area because that gets tricky. Uh, what I thought my strength, geometry, when I started my scholaranium and then attempted that, I was it's a miserable failure. I was somewhere around 20% or something.
Oh wow.
Primarily because one thing that e-GMAT, quant, I'll just speak about quant for the time being because so for a for a person who is like not really for a person for whom quant is not really a strength, I think it gives a platform clearly to, and it gives an approach for each question. What is the approach? Standard approach for each
Mm-hmm.
question. You have to no shortcuts. Just do it this way, and then you'll get the easy. So that's quite helpful for persons who are like maybe somewhere around. I don't want to exactly tell the score. Maybe somewhere around 42 to
Mm-hmm.
48 between that range. Probably that will be immensely helpful because then the error rate will reduce like anything.
Mm-hmm.
Will drop. At the same time, what it does is I think you have to solve that question. It kind of builds, at least in me, it kind of built that thing that okay, if there is a question,
Mm-hmm.
there is no time pressure. You have to solve that question. Unless you solve that question, you are not moving away. So that is the kind of what do you call attitude that automatically I think probably got built in me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was practicing on Scholaranium or anything, and then I go back and review whatever errors I made, and when it comes to assessing or when it comes to looking at the what do you call it, the small what do you call them, the exams that we have in Scholaranium, the
Ability quizzes.
the ability quizzes. Yeah, when I'm doing that ability quizzes, they have a timed there is a timed environment. So I whenever I encounter a question, I always need to be over optimistic. There are questions, if you go back and look at my data, I don't know whether
Mm.
you have access to that,
I
but
have, yes.
if you go back and look at that data, there are numerous questions which are hard questions where I spent 6 minutes because I'm like just refusing to go further because I'm in the hope that okay, if I solve this question, the next question maybe I'll be able to do it in like less than 2 minutes, and then
Mm-hmm.
overall I'll have it. That's the thing that I have. Probably that's where it kept me from completing those quizzes in time. But otherwise, my experience has been that in GMAT, when I'm actually taking the actual GMAT after I completed this Scholaranium and everything, and then I appeared for the GMAT, when I was taking the quant test, to be very frank, I was a little worried because till the last, very last question, not even a single question appeared tougher to me. Like I mean, I was like, I thought that my score is gone because I'm making mistakes. I mean, this is one of the things that you guys say that don't second guess on your questions and everything. But I think the last question was about GCM, GCD, and HCF and something.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little tough, and I think I have seen such a question on GMAT Club as well. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, I think mostly the other questions I didn't feel really tough. So the Scholaranium, what I wanted to say is for quant, the Scholaranium, if I look at very hard questions, they are pretty good. I think if someone is consistently able to crack those questions in 3.5 minutes, I'm not even saying that I may be prematurely concluding or making a conclusion here, but my personal observation is that if someone is able to do those questions consistently in 3 minutes, then I think they'll be able to reach that score of maybe 49, 50. That's my again
Yeah,
my
we've seen that happen very often, yes.
yeah. And on the other side, one of the things about quant is it's a great course. It covers each and every aspect and everything. But one thing that I also found it is there are certain questions which I found really time consuming if I follow that methodology.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things is about finding the maximum or minimum value of a quadratic equation. When does it max out and when does it when does it reach to minimum? So I come from a math background, so for me, I know that we can do a derivative and all that, so which
Yes.
I almost forgot in my
Yep. Mm-hmm.
in these years. But there are 3 or 4 such things where I'm spending a lot of time, and even the methodologies were a little, to adjust the quadratic equation, find a perfect square, and then identify all
You're
that.
going for a max, you're doing a derivative, equating it to zero and saying, hey man, this is
Yeah,
easy.
so I actually looked up on Google and YouTube, and I found about 4 methods of identifying quickly. So I just equipped myself with some of the questions where I am typically losing a lot of time. What I did was I found out for shortcuts, but it may not be for everyone. Like,
Yeah,
you
it's
have a
one of
family,
those things we can't put in. I mean, it's very tempting for us to put in, but
it
it's
considers,
yeah. I mean, in a global exam, you just cannot.
right?
Yeah, I mean that's something because a lot of people who take the GMAT do not know derivatives, and in fact, we put very elementary trigonometry, and we hear complaints about that as well.
Yeah, I think personally, I felt that whatever is there out there, and I think more or less it covers. I didn't find anything different in my GMAT exam other than.
Yeah, so I mean, it covers everything. It's just that unfortunately, because you can't do derivatives, you have to go through the class, the non, what's the non-integral and way or non-derivative way of uh, a non-calculus way. Sorry, I was like, what is the? And I was
Yeah,
just thinking about because Newton invented this just to prove and his theory of gravity, and I was like, man, I'm forgetting non-calculus way of going about doing this, and yeah, that's it's something that I do intuitively as well, but because we're used to it, but in a lot of countries that's not taught.
right.
So
So that's yeah, that's the quant preparation, and I think one of the things that I noticed for me personally, I'm not if there is a student who's for whom quant is not his strength,
mm-hmm.
probably for him the verbal sorry the live prep classes may be of much of a use, because I mean they will be, I'm sure, because they will have a lot of questions which will be answered. For me, I think quant was my strength. So
Yes.
but yet I still went ahead and watched almost all of the live prep classes, because I just want, like I said, I don't want to miss anything.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the classes, I think, reminders about reminders and number properties reminders, there was a concept of negative reminders which was
Yes.
covered in the live prep, which is not there
It's
in the
now there.
it's now there. Okay, it wasn't
Yes.
there when. So that
Mm.
was one thing that that was immensely helpful, because if someone doesn't know these negative reminders, I think some of the high end questions, which maybe questions of 700 plus questions, 700 range questions in quant, I think they get really difficult.
Mm.
Um, Having said that, I think other thing that I did was I also went through the Manhattan advanced quant book, just to
Mhm.
make sure that to improvise if there are any techniques to improvise my timing. The only thing that I learned from that is only new thing that I learned from that, which is not probably, which is again I think is part of the GMAT e-GMAT course as well, but I picked it up from there, is questions where which involve two variables, which is like
Oh.
some person A bought X pencils and uh, Y
Ah,
eraser.
yeah.
Each cost of person A pencil is $5, eraser is let's say $2. Since there are limited number of possibilities, and they say that the total amount spent is this much, and what are the chances of,
Okay.
so that
Okay, because it
requires you
has
to
to
prepare
be
a table.
integral numbers. So
Integral numbers, and it
yes.
just requires you to prepare a table. So
Yeah.
other than that, there are some guessing techniques and other stuff in Manhattan, which I think e-GMAT is anyways suggesting that it's not the right approach, so
Yeah.
I didn't have to use
The
them.
problem with those is they may work with some questions, but the way and that's kind of one of those things where you have to, when you create a course and you create a trackable course versus a book, you get that feedback which you don't get with the book. And one of the things that we found with with just even talking about these techniques is people use them like a hammer looking for nails. So once you teach someone a shortcut and says that it applies to, for here's an example of where you could apply this. Whenever they see a question like this, the first thing that they'll do is start using that shortcut, and and they would not focus on learning the concepts. Now, here is the other piece. If you know the concepts and somewhere you see the shortcut, you know, it'll stick with you. But I mean, it's an alternate approach that is there. It's not gonna. It may help you slightly, but not tremendously. But by the way, if you don't know the concept and you know the shortcut, whether that helps you or not is dependent purely on luck. And by the way, the downside of it is that, you know, you really think in your mind, I know the shortcut, why the hell do I need to learn the concept, which hurts you more than it helps you. So that's why we've refrained from doing that. That's something that a few people have said, and then yes, there's a wow effect when you see a short. I was like, hey man, yes, but essentially, yeah, it when you're serving 10,000 students a year, and you really say, hey, uh, you know, do I want to do this because I know to a big chunk of population, it's going to lead them to think in the wrong direction. So it's a decision that you have to make.
Sure. So I think overall, from a quant perspective, what I feel uh, about the e-GMAT is like there are enough number of avenues where you get all the tough questions that you need. For example, uh, see, we have Scholarinium, which is like which is immensely helpful, no doubt about it. I mean, in the last few days, I just selected hard and very hard questions, and then I kept on doing that. And then 800 score, some of the geometry questions and some of the probability questions that I found on 800 score are good. I mean, I cannot say whether GMAT tests those kind of things, but they definitely test the logic. You do not even need to do any math.
Yes.
You just need to pay attention and then see that the logic, and then immediately you get an answer. So those kind of questions. And then GMAT club with GMAT club, number properties, especially number properties questions related to GMAT club. I think these three combination, I think it's kind of.
We are actually doing a big enhancement in Scholaradium in 2 weeks or so. We are releasing our own mock test, and that also adds another 400 questions to Scholaradium.
Amazing.
So we're releasing 5 mock tests. In fact, Payal in the other room right now is interviewing with the alpha testers for mocks.
Sure.
So alpha and beta tests are going on right now, and the kind of feedback that we are getting is just amazing. The insights that the mocks tell you, they are amazing. So
and by the way, I wasn't even so that's not to say that the amount of questions that you have on Scholarinium right now are any less, because uh, again, you can go back to my data.
No, it's not just the number of questions. The beauty of this is when you take a mock test, which is given by e-GMAT, the way we are extracting insights from it, we actually been working, we spent close to 12,000 hours building these. And it tells you precisely where you need to focus on.
Yeah.
So we had a guy who scored Q49, and he was thinking, okay, to get to a Q50 or a Q51, he's going to spend about 35 hours. And with the insights, when we saw the output on it and the way the areas where he faltered, we kind of reduced that time to about 8 hours. We could really pinpoint where he should focus on in Scholarinium, and then come back, take a second mock, and so on and so forth. And that's the power of, you know, so the combination of the mocks plus the new Scholarinium that will be released in a couple of weeks or so. So it's the precision. And you're going to see some of that pop up in the next couple of days or so. We'll post some of the debriefing interviews. So yeah, but thank you for that feedback on Quant. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Sure. And I think you already have something like a quant wherein there was a test where we had to attempt some
workshop.
Yeah, quant workshop.
We have 2 quant workshops today.
Okay. And so that quant workshop also I attended, and it had some. I in that workshop, if you look at my data, the section which I practiced well by the time I attended that workshop, that had good scores. That was number properties, and the remaining ones were a little less. And then I think I was somewhere around 48 to 42 range or something like that.
Okay, so the beauty of that, so it should be 45 to 48. I think that's kind of where we bracket it now. So 42 to 45, 45 to 48, and so the beauty of that workshop is it gives you the behavioral areas where you're faltering, whether you're not drawing inferences from the question and so on and so forth. It gives you an Excel. If you really do that well, if you put that data in well, you'd really see, okay, where am I faltering, with what frequency. And then the next project that we want to do is just automate that process so everyone gets that. That's about a couple of thousand hours of effort or so. So So yeah, but I mean, the kind of data that we're getting from mocks, it's over the last 7 to 8 months, it's our third application of a neural network for
Oh,
the and it's just the results have been very satisfying. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed the personal study planner that we launched sometime in February, the PSP.
no, I did not. Yeah,
So it
I
basic
didn't have that. I was like preparing for my this thing.
Yeah, you're already prepared. So, but it then essentially it allows everyone to create their own personal set of milestones to achieve. In your case, let's say 760 score. So, what ability should you aim for based on your starting abilities? And then it tells you how many hours should you spend on number properties, on sentence correction, on critical reasoning, and so on and so forth. And so it gives you your entire study plan day by day for each individual. And that's something that we spend about 1,500 hours building, that has 3 neural networks running in there to optimize. Okay, what's based on your starting abilities, based on your field, what should be your ending abilities, and how much time is needed, and so on and so forth. So that was very, very satisfying to build. So right now, anyone in 7 minutes, it takes about 7 minutes to use that product, and can really get their own custom study plan. So, and we, since February, so we launched this on February 27th. We basically have had 3,500 people use that tool. So that was really good feedback. That was amazing. So let's talk about Sireesh, your post GMAT goals you want to apply to these schools.
Yeah,
And
I just want to yeah, obviously I want to talk about it, but verbal is one thing that I just want to say. I spoke so much about quant, but I think you know the reason I'm saying this is that I have personal interest in reading those kind of comprehension passages which are tough and those kind of stuff. But I've done several critical reasoning courses here and there. But one thing that I noticed is the quality of the questions that we have in verbal, especially compared to, especially on the critical reasoning front.
Mhm.
I did not find them in any other course that I have. Any other, like because in fact, I avoided preparing any other questions from any other source on critical reasoning, primarily because I thought it might corrupt my logic or whatever the process that I have built in my system. So I can clearly say that that is the difference that probably that it makes
You probably
that
also saw the new critical reasoning course.
there is a new critical reasoning
You
course.
went through the new one. The one that you went through in
Okay.
2012 is not the same that you went through now.
Yes, obviously. Maybe I don't recall that much, but like I
The
said, I
pre-thinking approach is the same, but this is about 3x as comprehensive as what it was in 2012.
okay.
This
So
was written completely from scratch.
right, it was really I mean comprehensive, and moreover, I think the quality of the questions is the differentiator here. So we can always build any critical reasoning and any kind of logic and everything, but I think it exactly kind of comes close to GMAT test. That's what I felt.
It takes a lot of effort to do that. I mean, so right now for the mocks that we're releasing, we've created 71 new passages or 120 additional critical reasoning questions and about 170 additional sentence correction questions. So around about we did about close to 550 to 600 questions, and to really finalize a question and a solution from beginning to scratch is about a 5-hour effort per question.
Right.
And
And the
and it,
other thing that I frankly from 2012 to the latest test that I took, the difference was that back then most of my preparation was based off books.
Mm,
Okay, the books, and only the verbal preparation was on e-GMAT,
mm,
and that too, I think the amount of time that you spend in front of screen studying will also calm down your nerves when you actually appear for the test. That's what I felt like when I went to the test. It felt like okay, I took one more mock. That's what
mm.
I frankly felt. So I think having this online has that benefit as well in terms
Oh,
of
it's an immense benefit, yes.
yeah, that's
And
what
and
I
a lot of the learning is going to go online. It's going online at well in the future. pretty much all of the learning will be online.
Yeah.
And I mean, the rich data that you get about what you're doing well and what you're not, where should you spend time going forward? It's just amazing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and I see that not so much. I mean, we look at data every day, but when you look at data in the process form that we see in mocks and the insights that gives us, it's even more amazing as to how much benefit that it can, how much the insights, what can it tell you about, hey, where should you not spend your time on, and where should you spend your time, and then do a complete closed loop thing where you can really say, this is where I needed to spend time. And the way you said you spend time on number of properties, took a workshop, you can do that on demand now,
Yeah.
which by the way is very difficult to do in books.
Yeah. That's definitely there. And I feel that people who are taking GMAT, that they have to spend good amount of time in front of screen, even though taking mocks and other stuff, or maybe preparing itself, because then it eases out and it calms down the nerves
Mhm.
when you actually appear for the test.
Yep.
That's what I felt, the difference between what I
Mhm.
prepared earlier.
Okay. So,
And yeah, go ahead.
so,
So
so I want to talk about also your post MBA, because I know
post,
we post GMAT, because we are on a
so
yes.
on the post GMAT goals, like I said, I wanted to get into. So right now I've been working in a MNC. So I joined. I spent about 10.5 years in JP Morgan, and then I joined another firm, State Street, um, and I lead a
This is a
team of
State Street Global Advisors, right?
State Street Global, no, State Street Services. Global Advisors is a branch, and State Street Global Services,
Mm-hmm.
State Street Global, because there are different entities within.
Divisions. Yep.
So yeah, this is State Street Global Services.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yeah, so I currently lead a team of 40. So I've spent enough time on financial services and other banking sectors. So my aim is to get into product management roles where, with the advent of new technology and other stuff, I've already been in this kind of roles for a little bit of time in the past, where I have been part of RFP and other NLP and other tools, evaluation of other NLP
Mm-hmm.
related tools to automate the kind of processes that we are doing or bring in new technology to automate. So I want to get into. I'm looking for an MBA which will give me a scope to get into product management roles for kind of banking solutions and product management roles within the
Mm-hmm.
financial services. And each of the firms, be it in JP Morgan or the current firm that I'm doing, they have their own set of in-house software development solutions, which may not be up to the mark, not up to the mark, which may not be well versed with the kind of technologies, or which may not be in a skill level, not up to the extent the other firms, which small firms which specialize in this kind of NLP and other modern technologies. The way they are able to innovate and build the technologies, maybe uh, companies whose primary focus is on the financial services and other operational services, they may not be able to do um, they may not be able to come up with those kind of technologies to integrate with their processes and automate, which I have seen in my previous organization here as well. So
Mm-hmm.
personally, I have a lot of interest in getting into those kind of businesses and innovate and solve the problems that business has in terms of technology. So, and I'm also looking for a 1 year MBA programs that will give me that, which means that I do not have to lose out on a lot of time.
So
So
let me ask you this: you are in the financial services industry today.
yeah,
How, and you said it's not progressive as the industry itself, right? I mean, they invest in technology a lot, but they are not. They're a fairly conservative player in technology.
very conservative.
Okay, and how much of their services do they outsource to any other company today?
Uh, yeah, I think when it comes to, I mean, it varies from bank to bank. I think most of they do not outsource. That is a fact. They do not. But
Yes.
they kind of either acquire
Yes.
or they partner with the firm for a limited amount of time, and then
Do their own thing.
yeah, do their own thing or solve
Yes.
their problem and then
Remember
move
this:
on.
banks are always going to be super conservative in doing this. That's kind of been their history. And I haven't worked with banks a whole lot. I did a 5 month internship with Fidelity when I was in B school, and I was into their technology processes, and one of the things that we were looking at was, so they had another business. Fidelity owns a business called Colt. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. So Colt is a service provider, hosting service provider, not the kind of services you provide, but just purely data and bandwidth hosting service provider based out of Europe. And so, but Fidelity owns a good chunk in Colt. So I was working for Fidelity, but I was in a way outsourced from Fidelity to Colt, and they wanted to build their own data centers. And so, but Colt did not want it to be public information. So we worked under the disguise. We were in Fidelity offices overall, and we really said, "Hey, Fidelity wants to really outsource some of their data center piece and all, because we wanted to understand what the various infrastructure providers had, because we couldn't say the word cold." And we got a lot of people coming in, but none of them believed that Fidelity would ever outsource any bit of it. And that's kind of how, when I spoke with a few other people, friends of mine who are there, it's like these companies, companies in banking, companies in in uh, in oil and gas and electric power generation, they want to keep their processes in house, and 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 um, and that's one of the reasons why, if you look at even on hosting, Microsoft now has a co-hosting product. They were the first company to do that, because they knew that those companies are not going to go on AWS. They're not going to have anyone else host their servers overall, and so the thing that I want to really say is, what you want to do is very valuable, because again, any improvement in their processes is super valuable. Um, I think you have to make sure that your story takes this into account and spends it accordingly to be schools.
Right.
Because one of the things that happens is, you really have a goal, um, and then when you have a great application, really good background, you are an associate vice president right now at State Street, and so in terms of, you check all the right boxes there. The one box that you want to make sure that you also check is to really say, what you want to do is something that is feasible post your MBA, and from a capability, from a technology, from a background standpoint, it's all feasible. I think from a customer standpoint, you want to make sure that you marry that properly.
Right.
Either you become a part of the customer, or you create your own company, or essentially look at some of the companies that have done this. In your experience, you will have seen some companies that do this and really say, how do they structure their business model? And if you do that, I think you're golden. Because, as I said, you have the score, you have the experience, you have the BITS brand behind you, and it's a very well-known brand.
Right. So one of the things, Rajat, I just want to know from you, when we speak of IMD or INSEAD, I know they prefer international experience over. That's the common notion, that okay, they prefer international experience of the candidate over GMAT score or anything like that. I mean, given that most of the students who apply for INSEAD have around 700 plus GMAT scores.
Mm.
Again, critically, if I apply critical reasoning, most is okay. I think greater than 50%.
They do.
Yeah. Now, but one of the things that when I applied for INSEAD last time, and I thought one of the, though my video interview did not go to the extent that it should have, it should have been done well.
Mhm.
I think one of the reasons is I am lacking on the international experience, so I don't know my likely chances for INSEAD. And
I
what view
don't,
you?
nah. I mean, here is something. I mean, we work with, when you say you're lacking international experience, do you not work with people in the US or in Europe?
No, I do it every day, like from
So,
here. But, yeah.
so how is that
Uh,
different?
yeah, shouldn't be, but I'm just
No, I
still.
mean, don't beat yourself up for it. Okay, don't beat yourself up for it. I mean, you work with them. What is, I mean, think about, what is international experience?
Dealing with a different culture probably, but
Yes,
we.
but you work with a different culture. I mean, many different cultures. As a part of someone who provides operational services, across, I mean, you have to interface with various business units. That's how, I mean, anyone who leads a team of operations and is into process changes works,
Yeah.
right? So don't
And what
beat
yeah,
yourself up for this. Someone who really says that, hey, you don't have international experience. No, you do. You probably have more international experience than people who are here. Why? Because let's say you're an IT guy who's there in the US, you most likely work within a single department. Most people are coders who are just coding, coding, coding. They don't face the customers. They have a boss who in turn faces the customers, right? In your case, your customers, you're a customer facing guy, and then you are an engineer facing guy on the inside.
yeah. And what's your view on IMD and
In
uh,
what ways do you want to know my view?
in terms of the global brand value and what is it that they value the most from your experience? If you have any e-GMAT students who went there,
I think I could think of a few that I know. I'm sure there are lots of people who've gone there. Um, so why does brand value matter to you? I think the question really is, you have to be very clear with what do you want to do post your MBA and what do you want to learn during your MBA. Because every top B school has really, I mean, IMD is one school I really wanted to go to, but when I was doing my MBA, I was very young. So an IMD typically takes people with your kind of experience. When I was doing my MBA, I was 23 and a half. So, so it was, but I mean, I loved the school. I loved how, it was there in Switzerland and all. But essentially, um, I don't know how many software companies Switzerland has or how many technology related companies Switzerland around us has. So when you're going to do that MBA, I don't know if you'd be able to interact with people who want to do something similar and who kind of dream of doing something similar.
yeah.
So that's, I think, the one. I mean, that's where if you have a very specific goal, the school should have resources around that goal. It all comes back to why this MB or why this school. IMD may have some professors, may have some banks who could be customers, but during those 2 years, that's going to be not as huge an interaction, which, by the way, a Columbia or a Stern or even a GSP Chicago or a Wharton would have, right? Uh, and that's
So
kind of where you have to find that marriage. I mean, all of these schools have a great global brand. I mean, you can go anywhere.
yeah, so that's one of the other reasons why I thought of applying to schools, especially in New York, like NYU or Columbia,
Yep.
because that the, the tech environment that I was thinking of
Yeah, and New
is
York has an
really
amazing tech environment, yes. So, but again, do that research on that school specific piece. Have there been such companies by the school alumni? Figure that out.
yeah,
Because when you put that piece in the interview, that's when the belief comes in. It just adds that piece to it.
yeah,
And that's when the guy really sees, okay, hey, this guy's done his research. And that's precious. So, so again, it's a very logical thing. I mean, and to others also really be thinking about it. It's not about impressing the schools. It's about really answering that question. Why the hell do I want to do an MBA? And truly answering that question. And honesty is truly the most believable thing. And then, you're doing that research to really determine why that school and how that school. And remember, it doesn't have to be only that school.
yeah. That's another thing that I probably missed last time because I kind of didn't apply to enough safe schools. Uh, I was like kind of I want to only apply for the Ivy Leagues, and then I only got from Wharton, whereas I applied for MIT. I applied for um, yeah, I applied for MIT and I applied for a couple other schools as well, but I got
Yeah.
it only from Wharton. MIT
No,
rejected,
but
and
again, there has to have been something wrong in your application. Again, your GMAT score was lower, so this time it's different. So so I mean, I would really just say that that I mean, don't be disheartened with what happened last time. Focus on the causality aspect of it and work. And I'm gonna actually just